Welcome, children. Today we'll start a new lesson. The name of the lesson is The Shoemaker, written by Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was an English writer and social critic. He created some of the world's best known fictional characters and is regarded by many as the greatest novelist of the Victorian era. He was born on 7th February 1812 in United Kingdom. His many volumes include such works as Oliver Twist, A Christmas Carol, David Copperfield, Bleak House, A Tale of Two Cities, Great Expectations, and Our Mutual Friend. The lesson, The Shoemaker, is taken from the novel A Tale of Two Cities. The novel tells us the story of the French doctor Manet, his 18-year-long imprisonment in the Bastille in Paris, and is released to live in London with his daughter Lucy, whom he had never met. The story is set against the conditions that led up to the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror. Now let's go through the lesson. Charles Dickens' famous novel, A Tale of Two Cities, is set in the cities of London and Paris. The story begins in the year 1775, a little before the French Revolution. Lucy Manet grew up in London, believing that she had been orphaned until Mr. Jackie Rory, an employee of Tellson's Bank and a guardian of the Manet family, brought her the startling news that her father, Dr. Manet, was alive. He took her to Paris to meet her father. So, Lucy Manet grew up in London just like an orphan. She thought that her parents both died. But Jarvis Lorry, an employee of Tellson's Bank and a guardian of Manet family, brought her the startling news. Startling news means surprising news that her father, Dr. Manet, was alive. He took her to Paris to meet her father. So that way, Mr. Lorry took her to Paris to meet her father. Dr. Manet had been a distinguished doctor in Paris. He had refused to support a cruel French nobleman, and consequently, the nobleman had Dr. Manet thrown into the northern tower of the terrible prison called Bastille. No one knew what had happened to him. Dr. Manet had been a very famous, efficient, talented doctor, and he was working in Paris that time. He had refused to support a cruel French nobleman. He did not support that French nobleman, and as a result of it, that man threw Dr. Manet in the prison Bastille, and no one knew what had happened to him. After that, all thought that he is no more, but don't know what happened to him. Released from prison after 18 years, Dr. Manet was in the care of Defarge, a man who once worked for him. But he was alive, and he was released from the prison. And who brought him? Defarge. Defarge was the attendant in Dr. Manet's hospital or the nursing home, and he took him to his place. When Mr. Lorry and Lucy entered the little room where Dr. Manet was, they found that the once brilliant doctor was a broken man who sat at a bench making shoes. When Lucy and Mr. Lorry entered the room, they found that the doctor is not that brilliant doctor who was there before, but he was a broken man. And he was sitting at a bench and he was making shoes. Now let's see the rest of the story. Let's read the part of the story that describes Lucy's first meeting with her father. Now let's see her first meeting with her father. "Good day," said Monsieur Defarge, looking down at the white-haired man bent low over a shoe. As he got inside the room, Mr. Defarge wished good day. To whom? To the white-haired man who bent low over a shoe, who was working on a shoe. The man raised his head for a moment and answered in a very faint voice, "Good day." The man raised his head. When he heard the sound "good day," the man who was working on that particular shoe raised his head for a moment and answered in a very faint voice. Very faint voice means very soft and mild voice. He also said, "Good day. You are still hard at work, I see. Now also you are working very hard, I see." After a long silence, the man lifted his head for another moment and replied, "Yes, I am working." For a longest span of time, he did not say anything. After that, he raised his head or lifted his head for another moment and replied, "Yes, I am working. Yes, I am working." The faintness of his voice was not just the faintness of physical weakness. Mentally as well as physically, the man was very weak. That's what is expressed through the faint voice. It was also the faintness of a man who had been alone and had not spoken to anyone in a long, long time. So that faintness is same. It was also the faintness of a man who had been alone. Nobody was there with him and had not spoken to anyone in a long, long time. For a longest span of time, he hadn't talked to anybody. It was like the weak echo of a sound made long, long ago. His voice was like that only. It was like the weak echo of a sound made long, long ago. It was just like that. It was like a once beautiful color faded away into a light stain that could hardly be seen. It was like a once beautiful color. Once it was very beautiful, and it faded away into a light stain, just like a stain it has become. So like that his voice was. It was like a once beautiful color faded away into a light stain. That means a light colored stain it has become that could hardly be seen. That means it was not able to see that brightness and efficiency on his face. It was like the voice of a tired traveler who has lost his way in the wilderness. So his voice was like that really. That means it was like the voice of a tired traveler who has lost his way in the wilderness. In the wilderness means in the place where no one lives. If a person is losing his way, surely he will be in trouble. Like that was his condition. The white-haired man continued to work silently for a few minutes. The white-haired man was going on doing his work. Then he looked up again with his sorrowful, tired eyes in a dull, mechanical way, not with any interest or curiosity. After that, he looked up again with his sorrowful, tired eyes. His eyes were tired and it was having that sorrow in it, and it was dull too. And in a mechanical way, he just looked at and not with any interest or curiosity. He had no interest or curiosity at all. "I want," said Rifaj, looking at the shoemaker, "to let in a little more light here." Now Rifaj said, "I want to let in a little more light." Little more light, that means if I open the door little more, do you mind? You can bear a little more, I hope. If I open the door little more, you will not mind and you will be able to bear it. The shoemaker stopped his work, looked with a vacant air of listening at the floor on one side of him, then similarly at the floor on the other side of him, then upward at the speaker. He looked both the sides and then he raised his head upward. "What did you say?" "Yes, what did you say?" "You can bear a little more light. You will be able to bear little more light or not? That's what I asked you." "I must bear it if you let in." So if you are letting in light, surely I must bear it. So if you want to open, you open. That's what he meant. I will discuss the rest of the lesson in your next class.